Alright, so this is another one of those videos I was debating whether or not I wanted to do, and then I'm like, screw it. Yeah, I want to talk about that because I find this really interesting. Over the weekend, recently, we discovered some big news involving Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. It was like one of Marvel's biggest drops ever from a successful weekend. It had this really big opening and then just this huge drop. And one of the videos that you keep seeing over and over and over from a lot of people like me is Phase 4 is dead, Phase 5 is off to a terrible start, and oh my god, this is Marvel's dead, no coming back, no, they shot it, that's it for whatever reasons that they list. And I'm one of those people where I'm definitely not gonna say that Phase 4 wasn't underwhelming. It was for me. But I find it interesting having seen the history not only of Marvel but also of Disney and the constant up and downs that they've had, that I kind of say to myself, I feel like they've gotten in much worse than this. They've gotten out of much worse, I should say. And when I look over Phase 4 compared to the other phases, I feel like it's not being defended as much as it should be, but there are clearly problems that a lot of us are pointing out, and many of them are very obvious, but there are some things that if we want to see it get better, I think we should really put a spotlight on what was done well and what needs to be improved, and Quantumania is technically the start of Phase 5. With that said, everyone says Phase 4 is the worst, you can't get any worse than this. First of all, let's go over just real quick, super speed run, what came out in Phase 4. We have WandaVision. I wasn't a fan, but I know a lot of people liked it, so fair enough. Falcon and Winter Soldier, a lot of people like that. Loki, I really loved it, I know a lot of people loved it. Black Widow, people either are middle of the road or don't like it, I thought it was okay. Shang-Chi, again, I was middle of the road, a lot of people seem to like it. What If, I didn't see it, a lot of people say it's good. Eternals, bad. Definitely bad, like hilariously bad to me. Miss Marvel, I guess again some people are on the fence about it. I really liked it, I enjoyed it a great deal. Spider-Man No Way Home, holy shit, amazing. Like the best live action Spider-Man movie, hands down. Just there's no competition in my eyes. Not the best animated, but best live action. Hawkeye, another one I sadly didn't see. Everyone says it's pretty good. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, another one people are kind of on the fence about, but I really enjoyed. It's a great Sam Raimi Marvel movie, had a great time. Thor: Love and Thunder, I really didn't like. I guess a lot of people are either on the fence or don't like it. I can definitely see where they're coming from there. Black Panther 2, I think a lot of people liked it. I don't think they loved it, but they thought it was pretty good. Nice tribute to Boseman in there. Moon Knight, another show people really seem to like. I enjoyed it as well. She-Hulk, crazy divisive. Usually leaning towards not liking that I get from people, but I definitely know others that enjoy it a fair amount and like it okay. And then we have Quantumania, which people seem to be on the fence about, leaning towards they like it, but they don't want to go back and see it as a result of this past weekend. So that is Phase 4, and there's a lot in there, including TV. They just started doing TV. Now, with that said, let's look at Phase 2. Again, just the lightning round. Iron Man 3. A lot of people say this movie is bad, but Robert Downey Jr. is great. Thor: The Dark World sucks. I know a lot of people that don't like it now. They did when it came out, but they don't like it now. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. That one's pretty good. That's actually said to be one of the better Captain America movies, so good job on that. Guardians of the Galaxy. Also good. I think the sequel's better, but good movie. Age of Ultron. I thought it was passable, but I guess a lot of people hated it more than I did. I'm somewhere in the middle. Ant-Man. Again, a lot of people are divided on this movie. I thought it was fun, but pretty light. And that's it. That is all Phase 2 gave us. Now let's really compare that. When you look at Phase 4, and yes, there's a lot of things that didn't work, but I think there's kind of more things that did and worked in a really big, impressive way than there is in Phase 2. And I remember when Phase 2 happened, everyone said, you know what, that's it, after Avengers, they're not gonna be able to top it. Nope, no way at all. And now we're kind of getting that again with Avengers Endgame, where they're like, man, you can't top this, how you gonna top this? And a part of me does kind of go, yeah, I think we're kind of seeing the end of a certain era here of just like this really great momentum and adrenaline that was just building up finally to this really big payoff that was Endgame. It's called Endgame. I mean, I feel like people are ready to kind of put it to sleep after that. Like, yeah, we'll still watch Marvel movies, but we're not going to get something like this again. And in some respects we haven't. I argue with Spider-Man No Way Home we kind of did, but even that's kind of a different creature because it's going back to these other movies that weren't really part of the MCU then. And I feel like anytime we kind of get excited, like, oh man, this is going to be like a new groundbreaking thing that we're going to see, it's usually bringing in new properties that they couldn't use before, like with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse, like other versions of X-Men that's kind of like the movies, but also like the cartoon show. And I will admit, for me, that's really exciting, and that's what I love to see more of. But something I really think people are missing big time with Phase 4, and this is what I really want to say, man, I want you to put more focus on this, and really say, hey, this is something you're doing right and we want to see more of, is they're experimenting. Now, there's a difference between experimenting and gambling. Gambling, you're putting something of risk up. There's something you can lose. And yes, with any production, you can kind of argue that. But in terms of the storytelling and character, you're really kind of risking something here. And I don't think that's what Marvel's doing in Phase 4. I would say it's experimenting, though. You look at something like WandaVision, like Loki, and even She-Hulk, and Ms. Marvel, these shows that, yes, some people like, some people don't, but they're trying something different. They're trying something different with the style, they're trying something different with the setup, but it does ultimately come back to what's familiar, what's worked in the past with Marvel, which is a lot of quips, which is trying to be very modern and really cool with, younger people and stuff like that. But on top of that, you have things like Werewolf by Night. That was just a one episode kind of special that they put out on Disney Plus, but it was different. And a lot of people said, man, we want to see more of this. Like, this is what people thought of when they thought of experimenting with Marvel, but they really didn't put much attention on the other stuff here. Like Moon Knight, yes, is another superhero, but kind of going to this Egyptian background and the Egyptian gods, that was something a little different. So I feel like whenever people talk about Phase 4 and say, there's nothing to it at all, I think there really are seeds of something really great in there with them trying to do something different. Again, compare this to Phase 2 of Marvel. I mean, it's laughably not experimental in that regard. I mean, there is like nothing new in Phase 2. So I think when people just kind of ignore it and say there's nothing here, they're really missing that element of experimenting. But I also know where they're coming from, because yes, there is also that element of just doing the same shtick, dipping their foot in different waters, but they are going to different waters, and I think we should encourage that. I think we really should say there is something here and we want to see more of it. Now, with that said, if you want my opinion of how do you fix Phase bore to Phase fine, because I think that's what this phase is going to be called. If they're like Quantumania, I really think that's what it's going to be called. People are going to see it, they're going to say, yeah, that was fine, I don't know, and see it again. And I think that's what they're kind of setting up here, and I don't think that's what people want to see. They want to get excited again. And I think if you want people to get really excited for Marvel movies again, there's two movies that have come out recently that you should really pay attention to. One of them is Puss in Boots 2, which I used to say, oh my god, I know that sounds so silly, but if you have seen this movie, which it sounds like you have, this movie is still in the top 5 for weeks and weeks being seen on the big screen, chances are you've seen it, and you know why people are going back to see it. You know why that's not suffering that big a drop. If anything, sometimes it climbs up, and Quantumania, it has a huge drop. It's that you have something that, yes, is a follow-up to something that people weren't really demanding. Who wanted to see Puss in Boots 2? How many people even saw Puss in Boots 1? Or remember Puss in Boots 1? I mean, Shrek is still a name, but they took something and said, let's really give this kind of a new take, give it kind of a new look, and really have this incredible energy behind it, grounded by something we can all relate to and we can all connect to. There's so many things going on in this movie about trying to find your home, trying to find who you are, trying to be comfortable with what you have and who you are, and I mean, just so many layers to it, but it's also very funny, and on top of that, it is crazy creative, not just with the characters and the comedy, but the visual style. This movie is so fast and throwing so much at you and trying something different. The visual style and the animation is a little different. A lot of people have compared it to Spider-Verse, where they're kind of cutting frames, and some people are divided on it. I think it really works, surprisingly. I didn't think I'd be that sucked into it, but they're trying something really different while still having a grip on what they know is going to keep you interested, which is these characters and this good comedy. Quantumania didn't have that good comedy. It had comedy that felt 20 years old. And on top of that, I don't think there's anything really at the focus that's gonna anchor people to want to come back. Yes, there's a giant Ant-Man destroying a city at the end, but why? It's to stop another bad guy, and we don't even get the bad guy's plan in this. He just wants to be evil. He just wants to take over the world. With Thanos, you did at least, you built him up, but he wasn't the main villain until you got to Infinity War, and they spend a lot of time really showing what he's about and why he's doing what he's doing. And even though you disagree with him, you don't want mankind to be wiped out, you see where he's coming from, and it spends a lot of time building this up. And while the actor for Kang is fine, I don't think they really gave a core to him. They really allowed us to figure out what he was about. So there's all these really cool effects and cities and spaceships and cool creatures fighting, but you don't care what they're fighting for. I don't know the people in this city or this town, but they have some one-liners that are clearly trying to be a meme, like you always have an option not to be a dick, or whatever the hell the line was, that nobody's gonna quote or put online or anything like that, or a little gif or a tweet or anything, because it's obvious that's what they're trying to do. Where in something like Puss in Boots 2, that's being memed all over the place, and they're just trying to be funny. They're just trying to tell a good story, and people related to it. They connected to it. And again, always keep in mind whenever I'm kind of bawling someone out for this, I'm including myself in there as someone who has done this. I've totally tried to force memes in the past. I'm sure like people are like, oh gee, I wonder what he's trying to do here. I acknowledge it totally, especially like in the old days. So this is coming from a place of someone that says, I have done this. It has worked in the past, but now it is dated. It is done. And when we look back on it, it's like, oh, it's clear what they're trying to do. Hey, I just think this is fun. I love to spread it, maybe make it a thing. There was a joy to it. But if I'll try that now, it'd be cringy, it'd be silly. Why would anyone want to watch something where it's like someone's just clearly trying to cram something down your throat and it's not happening organically? And with something like Puss in Boots 2, it feels like they just want to tell a good story with good characters and good visuals and great imagination. And with Ant-Man Quantumania, they're trying to sell a franchise. They're trying to set it up for the next one, the next Ant-Man, the next Marvel movie. And we're feeling it more and more, especially because we've had years of getting used to this. And that's remarkable. I mean, I've grown up watching movies that, yes, have sequels, but I've never seen like cinematic universes that have like this much of a budget and this much of a to be continued and this much confidence that we're gonna have another movie and we can just tell more of the story after that. It really is amazing, but we are catching on to it and we're getting tired of it. So Puss in Boots 2 is one of the movies where I say you gotta look at that and really see what they're doing and how they got people sucked in and want to return back to it. And the other movie that does that, I just finished it, and by God, if all Marvel movies were like this going forward, it would take a long time for me to get tired of them, is RRR. Now, chances are you've either seen this movie and you know what I'm talking about, or you've heard people talk about it, and I am telling you, everything you've heard is right. This movie is spectacular, it's crazy long, it's 3 hours, but I think this is the first 3-hour movie I ever saw where I was actually saying, more, more, more! I could not believe how crazy, extreme, in-your-face, intense, over-the-top this was. But at the same time, they did have this dramatic center that you could connect to very quickly, and in a way that kind of takes these things that we relate to and we can understand, and it blows it up in this world of fantasy. This is the closest I've ever seen to a live-action anime. And that isn't just the visual style and the fighting and stuff like that, it's the storytelling as well. Anime is not trying to be real. It's trying to represent real emotions and real dilemmas that people go through and can connect with, but it does it in a fantastic way, an exaggerated way, and doesn't try to look 100% realistic. I mean, most anime faces have, you know, the really big eyes and the hair that goes in front of the eye, but you can see through the hair. It's this great style, but you remember it. Your memory stores these visuals and it stores these adventures that they're going on. That's what RRR does. It will go really silly. I mean, I laughed so hard during so much of this film, but when it wants to be dramatic and serious and really feel what these characters are going through, you do, even though it's very cartoony. And I think it's saying, you know what, we don't want to be realistic. Like, at all. We just want you to connect with these people. And when they're angry, we're going to visually show how they're angry. When they're happy, we're going to visually show and exaggerate how they're happy. And even though in real life, when you want to really get back at someone, you're not releasing tigers and other wild cats in slow motion and doing these cool fight scenes, but that's what it feels like. That's why you remember it. And I think that's what Marvel is missing. I think they need to go and look at Puss in Boots 2 and RRR. Sounds very, very strange, but if you actually watch these two movies and you get really sucked into them, you can kind of see this is what is missing from Marvel right now. And I think they can get back. I think they just have to say, let's not try to make this relatable in a way that's just saying funny lines or gonna be memed online or always thinking of the next movie necessarily, because RRR is just a totally original story. As far as I know, I don't think it's based on anything, and it's just a story that starts where it starts and ends where it ends. It's not building up another film. It's not coming off of another franchise. It is just completely coming out of nowhere, grabbing you and saying, we're gonna take you on a ride, something you've never seen before. And I think that's what Marvel has to do now. And I think both Marvel and Disney are relying way too much on the attachment people have to past characters, to what has worked in the past. And part of why we have that attachment to those characters is because at one point they were new. I mean, whoever heard of Guardians of the Galaxy when it came out? I mean, maybe a few people did, but I mean, people were laughing saying, oh my god, what are they making this on a dare now? I mean, there's a little raccoon shooting a machine gun, and now it's like they're on number 3, and it looks really good. I'm excited to see it, but at the same time, I want to see something new, something that's gonna really, really get me excited. And something like RRR, which has the most bare bones tropes, like a kid is kidnapped and someone has to go save her, but he befriends someone who's ultimately going to become his enemy. I mean, how many times have we seen that? Or Puss in Boots 2, somebody wants a wish to make his life better. I mean, these are all tropes that go back as old as time itself, but they add something to it that can quickly connect with you, and it does it in a visual way that is new and is exciting and says, to hell with reality. Let's just go total fantasy, because you're gonna remember that. It's not showing what can happen in real life, but it's showing how you feel in real life in a new, fantastic way. I don't remember how anybody feels in Quantumania, and I don't really care. So yes, the point of this video is to say I don't think Phase 4 is a complete wash. I think something like Phase 2 is kind of less impressive. Honestly, Phase 4 at least experiments, but with Phase 5, I really feel like we can add a lot more to it. You can look at what has worked in Phase 4, you just gotta kind of, go through all the mundane stuff in it and say, okay, the experimenting works, but a lot of the old tricks are not. And you can rely on old tropes, certainly, but you really have to add something new and exciting, and I think it really does have to come from the emotions of what the characters are feeling and the dilemmas, and the visuals have to reflect that. I think people are kind of working backwards at the MCU right now. They're thinking of the visuals and then the emotions. And sometimes that can work, certainly. I think they just really need to go back to the bare bones stuff. What do these characters want? How are they gonna get it? How is it in conflict with someone else's thoughts that maybe they want the same thing? I mean, just really, really simple stuff that then should be reflected in this incredible visual way. I think Disney is relying too much on what's familiar. I mean, you saw how many sequels they're gonna release soon with like Toy Story 5 and all these other sequels, and some of them I'm excited for. I actually really want to see an Inside Out 2, but a lot of them aren't you kind of saying, man, I have no interest in that. I'll probably check it out, but I'm not excited. I feel like MCU before got us excited. How are they gonna do that? How are they gonna do Thor? How are they gonna do Captain America? That just seems so outside the realm of possibility at that time. And now it's like very commonplace, like Captain America is now like a symbol. Where before it was like, man, how are you gonna make him with those little wings on his helmet and stuff like that? How are you gonna make him credible? How are you gonna make people not laugh at him? And now they did it so well that he really is an icon, and that's fantastic. But now the ante needs to be upped. We really need to go the next step, and I think the secret is in experimenting with something new and keeping the core focus, something that's relatable but then exaggerate it, like blow it up in a way that just says to hell with reality. I think that's what Puss in Boots 2 does. I think that's what RRR does. I think that's what the MCU needs to do. So let me know your thoughts on the MCU right now, phase 4, phase 5. Do you agree? Do you think that it's getting too much hate? Do you really think it's fine and you still like seeing the Marvel movies? You look forward to them? Or do you think, no, it's not even salvageable, we should just be done and stop, there's just nothing new here at all and we should just be done with it? Or are you somewhere in between like I am, where you're kind of saying, man, I want to hope, I want to see this thing that has really meant a lot growing up, both in comics and in movies, still be great and still try something new? You just don't know, though. You're crossing your fingers open. Let me know your thoughts. I'll see you next time. Take care.